How's it going, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in this evening or downloading as a podcast or however you are receiving this show. Just quick, again, I'm still looking for a co-host for the show, so if you are interested on either being for AEW or New Japan or both, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can also send comments, questions, feedback all the way to eric@thatswrestling.com as well. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can get this as a podcast in all your favorite podcast apps, or you can head over to thatswrestling.com and get the RSS feed over there. If you are listening to this as a podcast, I do these shows live on YouTube, so head over to YouTube and search for That's Wrestling. Also, the link will be in the show notes as well. Go over there and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the little bell, and it will let you know when I'm going live for these shows. There's been a little inconsistency in the past couple weeks. There's just been some stuff going on, and hopefully everything will be back to normal after this evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite for February 12th, 2020. But first, I just want to say I am going to work on catching up on New Japan. I have not watched much of the New Beginning shows, so I am going to hopefully watch those this weekend, and I will then get my thoughts out on those hopefully soon. So, all right, let's get into it. AEW Dynamite for February 12th, 2020. The show started off nicely with a recap of AEW's last week, which that's an improvement. Getting recaps at the beginning of the show. I mean, it's kind of one of those things, especially with like AEW. A lot of people are only watching Dynamite, and that's it. They're not watching any other content, and it's, 7 days between shows, so people are not thinking about AEW between the shows, so you definitely need to just give a little refresher. Just, 90 seconds, totally worth it, and you can set up everything that's going on. So they set up the recap of Moxley taking out Santana's eye, Kenny Omega accepting Pac's challenge for the rubber match, and Riho getting taken out by Nyla Rose, and that they are going to be having a women's title match tonight. So that was a good start to the show. The show starts off with SCU versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. This is a rematch for the tag titles. And interestingly enough, the tag titles will be defended next week as well. So they are getting a bunch of defenses in here quickly. So Kenny Omega and Page's graphic, Hangman Page's graphic has been really funny as of late. They've been putting little blips in there that are pretty funny, and this time it said 22 days as champion, and then it says days sober, Omega 13,268, which is how old he is, and Hangman 0. So I thought that was a nice, funny little touch. Right before they start the match, Omega and Kaz give each other a handshake and a fist bump, and then right away Dark Order breaks in with a video, and Uno talks about how there are more than just the four of them, and some will be closer than you think, and that they are waiting for the Exalted One, and the video ends, and Christopher Daniels decides that he's going to head to the back to take care of this, to try to find the Dark Order, and then Christopher Daniels is never seen again. So, given how strongly they've been hinting towards Daniels, I'm going to say that is definitely a red herring. I don't know why they would go with it, because everybody thinks that's the case. They're probably going to come a little more out of left field. There's some speculation that the Exalted One is going to be Matt Hardy. There apparently was a few comments on Twitter between Evil Uno and Matt Hardy. Something about Matt maybe saying goodbye to AEW and goodbye to WWE, and Evil Uno put something along the lines of "you say goodbye, I say hello" type of crypticness. Again, Is it going to be Matt Hardy? I don't know. Of course, I don't know if it would be a problem if they were negotiating ahead of the end of his contract. Obviously, that has been such a weird issue. I don't know why people wouldn't negotiate before the end of their contract to go somewhere else. That really makes no sense. I don't know why you can't negotiate when your contract is ending with other companies. It's like, well, I need to know what the offers are before I say, yeah, I'm going to renew with you. Anyhow, is it going to be Daniels? Is it going to be Matt Hardy? Or are we going to get a total swerve and we are completely wrong on what's going on? Given how much is out there on the speculation between either Daniels or Matt Hardy, I wouldn't be surprised if it was neither of them. And I don't have a good idea of who it would be. Marty Scurll is obviously out as well. So I have really no clue at this point. Or they could pull it and that Marty Scurll is actually it, and that the signing with ROH is something that they are keeping out there as well, but there is a relationship between Scurll and AEW. So who knows? We will see. Anyways, that the match starts. Omega and Kaz give each other a fist bump. Hangman just goes to the corner and gets out of the ring. Sky throws a cheap shot into the back of Omega when he gets thrown into the ropes. They're kind of like looking at each other. It's like, dude, aren't we having... This should be a gentleman's match, right? Why did you... And then Omega's like, all right, you want to play that way? And he boots him in the face off of the apron and continues wrestling with Kaz. Sky hits a dive at one point, and then Kenny hits a dive onto the outside. Sky ends up waiting so long in the ring for Kenny to do the drop kick to the back of the head that Kenny likes to do. This is one of those things that really bugs me a lot is there being such a delay between the person standing up and Kenny actually hitting the drop kick. They really need to work on the timing and realize... It's a little bit of both men's fault, but I think for the most part, it's whoever's getting the drop kick. They need to be more aware of where Kenny Omega is, and if he hasn't even started climbing the ropes, then don't stand up. Get to a knee and act like you're having an issue trying to stand up and wait for Omega to actually start climbing the ropes before you actually stand up. Otherwise, you're just looking like an idiot staring away from your opponent in the middle of the ring, just standing there. And this is one thing I noticed in the Janela match as well when they did on AEW Dark. I was actually there for that match. Janela, same thing. He was there for so long that he's like, what's going on? What's going on? And he actually started to look over his shoulder to see what the heck was going on, what was taking Kenny Omega so long. And I think that's one thing you just need to look out. Whoever is going to be taking the drop kick, they need to be aware of where Omega is before they stand up. And don't stand up until Omega starts climbing the ropes or something like that, so you don't have such a huge delay. There's another move later on in the show that I'll talk about, same thing. There's a bunch of big cowboy shit chants. So Hangman is definitely getting over accidentally as a babyface as they're hinting to turn him heel. So I'm thinking they're going to have to kind of scrap their plans a little bit and just go with what's going on. And sometimes this type of groundswell just lands in your lap and you just kind of got to go with it. I don't see any point at this juncture to turn Hangman heel and just keep him as the beer guzzling cowboy badass kind of character that he's kind of become at this point. Omega goes for the You Can't Escape. Hangman hits the standing or the running shooting star press, but when Kenny Omega goes for the moonsault, Scorpio Sky gets his knees up. Hangman does a great hot tag sequence. He lays out both Kaz and Scorpio Sky. He gets a bunch of shots in. I know he loves to do all these lariats, but man, I don't know which one he did, but he booted them out of their shoes. It was insane. So he hit some of these huge, big boots, and it was pretty awesome to see. Also, we had... then after that, there's another cowboy chant, and that ends with Hangman going for the buckshot, but Scorpio Sky ducks it, and Kazarian hits a massive lariat on Hangman. Sky and Kazarian both end up hitting double cutters on Hangman and Omega, and then they put dragon sleepers on both of them. But the ref, because both teams have an illegal man in the ring at this point, he starts a 10 count to get the illegal men out of the ring. Omega ends up getting a blind tag. He jumps in, hits a V-trigger on Sky, and then a Snapdragon. Sky stops a buckshot V-trigger combo, but in the end, they end up hitting it, and they pick up the pin to retain the titles. So Omega and Hangman continue their tag title reign, and later on in the show, it is announced that next week they're going to defend the titles once again, and this time it's going to be against the Lucha Bros. So next week, that is going to be one crazy match. I don't think we've seen these two teams go at it before, so I am looking forward to seeing how Lucha Bros versus Omega and Hangman Page goes. I would assume that Hangman Page and Omega are going to be retaining the titles I think they're going to hang on to them for quite a while. I think the Bucks may face them at Revolution, but we will see. Hangman goes out into the crowd and is drinking some beers, and with SCU still in the ring, the Dark Order come down and surround the ring. Best Friends run out to even up the sides. Then Butcher and Blade with the Bunny come out, and then the Hybrid 2 come out, and then the Young Bucks come out. JR actually at one point, he calls them the Young Bucks, and then he says the Bucks of Youth, which I believe is a Matt Hardy reference, possibly. And then the whole thing breaks out into a massive brawl, because next week there is going to be a tag team battle royale for a title shot at Revolution. Eventually it's down to the Young Bucks and Butcher and Blade. Bucks clear them out, and they're the last men standing in the ring. But there is a big crowd on the ramp side on the floor, so both Nick and Matt go up to the top rope on the two corners and do crossbody dives out onto the group. During the commercial break, Orange Cassidy actually ends up coming down, and the Dark Order just kind of ignore him. He puts his hands in his pocket, and they just kind of walk by him, and they're like, this guy isn't worth dealing with. Then OC gets in the ring with the Bucks, and they exchange a few low kicks and then a low super kick. It was very funny, very over with the crowd, but this is just a funny little thing that they did. They also did a group hug with the Bucks and Best Friends, with Orange Cassidy standing in the middle with, I believe, Matt put his bandana on Orange Cassidy's head as well. So it was a funny thing. I'm not sure if it was shown picture in picture. I watched the fight feed, so I got the whole thing. But it was funny, something for the crowd to see. They announced that the matches for the night, we have Riho versus Nyla Rose for the title, Jungleboy versus MJF, Santana versus Moxley. Then we have a in-ring sit-down interview with Santana. JR is interviewing him. Santana's talking about how 10 years ago he was broke, he was directionless, without a job, he felt like he was in the dark, living in a basement apartment in the Bronx, and that he called up his dad in the middle of the night and talked to him about how he was feeling. He's feeling like he's always in the darkness, and his father talks about how, well, that is his life every day. Santana goes on talking about how his dad started going blind at 14, and he was completely blind by 25. They didn't actually specifically mention this, but Santana's father did recently pass away right around the beginning of this year, but they didn't really make a direct mention of it. So I think a slight miss on this, but Santana is such a great promo, and I don't know why they went down this route, because this seems to be like a very babyface promo to cut, and he's a heel. They also talk about how JR mentions, well, you know, this is just retaliation for what the Inner Circle did to Moxley, and Santana continues to turn it around and say, well, really it's Moxley's fault, because the Inner Circle was serving up the world to him on a silver platter, and he started this whole thing by refusing the Inner Circle's offer. So he did turn it around a little bit, kind of get that heel heat in there, but this was such a babyface promo, so it was a little tough, but it is what it is. Next up, we have a video from Darby Allin. He has sent in a little black and white video. He's basically just shooting it towards the ground on a flipped over skateboard, and he basically holds up cue cards, Sammy Guevara style, and he's like coughing in the background because he can't talk. Has the cue card saying that the Inner Circle made a mistake by smashing his throat with the skateboard, and eventually he calls out Sammy Guevara for a match at Revolution. So it looks like we'll be having Sammy versus Darby Allin at Revolution, so that should be one heck of a match. It makes sense for these two to go at it at this point. Next up, we have Sammy Guevara with Jake Hager versus Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes' music, they've improved it a little. They've added like some violins and some other sounds in there, but it still sounds like a total ripoff of Brain Stew by Green Day, and it's kind of really annoying me at this point every time I hear it. This match was actually pretty good. It was a typical match, very similar to the match that they had on New Year's Day. Hager keeps getting involved on the outside, doing all these little things. Dustin actually has a stare down with him at one point on the outside, and Dustin hits a Canadian Destroyer at the end, and a final reckoning for the win. So he gets a win over Sammy Guevara after Sammy, I believe, won on the first of the year. Dustin then challenges Jake Hager for a match. He calls him Jericho's bitch and a few other things, and Jake Hager's just staring. He looks mad, pissed off. Sammy's kind of holding him back a little bit. They're up on the ramp. In the end, Jake Hager doesn't actually say anything, but it will be Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager at Revolution. So that match has been scheduled. So we will be seeing Jake Hager finally in a match in AEW, since he's been here since the first Dynamite episode. Britt Baker does a promo up on the ramp with Tony Schiavone. Once again, Britt Baker's talking about how she extracted Yuka's tooth for free because it needed to be taken out. And under her breath, she tells Tony to stand up straight, and he actually does, but you can see him mumbling something. He's kind of mumbling a lot throughout the thing. It's pretty funny. Basically, she's talking about how that she's actually the number one in the company. Doesn't matter what happens in the Riho Nyla Rose match. Everybody knows that she's actually number one. She was the first signed, all that stuff. And then she says she sees a lot of confusion from all the chubby Whataburger faces. Whataburger faces out in the crowd, and that hits a nerve for those in Texas. And basically, it was so loud at that point, the promo that she was cutting was just for the home audience because nobody in the arena could actually hear because they were booing her so loud. She says that she is the women's division, and what she did last week was a statement. And then that was the end of that. Before the women's championship match, they actually gave a video recap. Way to go. They recap things that Nyla Rose has been doing with putting people through tables, just running wild at the end of last year, and then attacking Riho last week and trying to put her through a table, but the table did not break. Riho kind of bounced off of it. So we have Nyla Rose versus Riho for the women's championship. Right before the bell, Riho attacks Nyla, and she just goes right as the ref was asking if Nyla was ready. So it was very close to right before the bell was going to ring. Anyways, but Riho's like, yeah, I probably got to get this going quickly. It was a pretty back and forth opening, and at one point Nyla gets sent out to the outside. Riho goes up to the top rope and does a crossbody to the floor. Nyla ends up catching Riho, gave her a backbreaker across the knee, and then rammed her against the ring apron, the corner of the ring apron. Nyla then drags a table out from underneath the ring and starts to set it up, and Riho actually ends up using it as a runway to deliver a drop kick. The match went to commercial at this point. The feed I was watching actually cut out. It looked like they were having some technical difficulties, so I am not totally sure what happened through most of the commercial. When the commercial kind of comes back, is right before the commercial came back, Riho reverses out of a choke slam into a crucifix bomb, which was really good. Nyla then does the hanging her opponent across the top rope and then going up to the top turnbuckle and doing the knee drop. This is the other move of the show that I hated because it just takes so long and makes Nyla's opponent look like such a chump for just hanging there out on the top rope. There is no reason that she shouldn't be able to just get out of that. She just stays there so long. And this isn't the first time I've seen in a Nyla Rose match where the opponent was just hanging on the top rope and hanging on the top rope and hanging on the top rope, waiting for the knee drop to come. It just makes them look so stupid. So again, Nyla just needs to get him on the top rope, make haste up to the top turnbuckle if Nyla's going to be doing this knee drop, because it just takes too long and makes the opponent look stupid. I just hate it so much. I don't want to see it anymore. Nyla Rose actually ends up going for a one-winged angel. So obviously Kenny Omega's move. Kenny Omega and Riho are good friends. They've known each other for a long time. I've heard a rumor that they are possibly dating. But they haven't mentioned that on the TV show. Anyhow, Nyla Rose goes for the one-winged angel. Riho gets out of it, hits 2 Snapdragon suplexes. Again, a staple of Kenny Omega. Riho hits a Northern Light suplex for a 2 count. The crowd is really into this match at this point. Riho ends up hitting a double foot stomp off the top rope for a 1 count. Nyla kind of gets up and stumbles and lands over near another corner. Riho hits 2 more foot stomps onto Nyla. The second one looked a little high, kind of like stomping Nyla on the face, or at least in like the way upper chest into the throat area. But Nyla Rose kicks out of that. Riho sets up in the corner. Looks like she's going to do like a running knee or something, but Nyla hits Riho with a spear, then hits the beast bomb and picks up the victory and is now the new champion. After the match, Nyla goes backstage. Omega is standing there at the bottom of the stairs in gorilla position, which I think they're actually calling Dusty position in AEW, and just talking about like, okay, where is my celebration? Jericho got a little bit of the bubbly when he won the championship. Where's my celebration? A few of the women from the women's division is standing there in the background. Britt Baker, Big Swole, Leva Bates, Chris Statlander, and there was one more, I think, possibly, but I cannot remember. Anyway, they were standing back there, and Nyla wants to know where her celebration is. After, I believe that was in the commercial break. After the commercial, we come back. Lexi is backstage with Jericho, And she says as such, and Jericho corrects her and says that it's Mr. Jericho. He basically is talking about how Moxley is trash and that he's scoured the world for an assassin to face him next week. And that assassin that he has found and is bringing into AEW is Jeff Cobb. So, wow, I was not expecting that. I was pretty sure Jeff Cobb was going full-time with New Japan. That was my guess. There's seems up in the air that Jeff Cobb is actually working on a freelance basis for basically everybody. He's not exclusively signed and is just agreeing to dates with New Japan, Ring of Honor, and AEW. So this will be interesting to see how it goes. If Jeff Cobb is here long term and then does sign long term with AEW after his agreed to dates with the other companies are through, or if he is going to just continue to be non-exclusive. I was really looking forward to seeing him in the G1 this year. So maybe he'll work out something like Moxley and Jericho have worked out, where they can go work New Japan dates over in Japan. So that should be interesting to see coming up in the coming year. And as far as that, I don't know if Moxley is still going back to Japan, if he's going to be in the G1 again. If he was going to be in the G1 again this year, that'd be sweet. But we will see. There's a quick Jeff Cobb video package, so they give a little bit of a taste to the audience who do not know who he is, a little bit of his in-ring work, courtesy of All Pro Wrestling, I believe it was, APW. Then there's a video cap of the Cody's lashing that he took last week with Brandi coming down. Brandi was on Wrestling Observer this week talking about how she felt that the Nightmare Collective just wasn't working. She pulled the plug, even though management wanted to continue it on. Brandi says that, she was the one who decided to call it off. Also, with Awesome Kong just being too damaged and too banged up to be able to work, they just kind of had to do what they did. I've not watched it on Dark, but I believe there is a breakup angle on Dark. And that brings me to Dark again. They didn't mention Dark once this entire show. They didn't recap anything from Dark, and they have not been for the past few weeks, and that is getting really annoying, especially when the entire Nightmare Collective breakdown was all over on Dark or on YouTube with Brandi seeing a psychiatrist and it just turning out to be a doll. It was all in her head. Something like that, and just kind of getting out of it. But at least they pulled the plug on the Nightmare Collective. Thank God. She was so much better here. She was on the commentary desk for the next match. She was pretty soft-spoken. She wasn't too aggressive getting in there. I'm not sure if it's just she doesn't want to overstay her welcome, and she wants to slowly get her baby face legs back under her, because she is just a natural baby face, and I have no idea why they ever decided to try to make her a heel, because you watch any of the other stuff with her, especially when she's doing talks at conventions and all this stuff, and public relations stuff, she should not be a heel on TV, especially because she is not a heel at all in real life, and there's no way she'd be able to pull it off, because she's very she seems to be a very charming person on all the non-wrestling videos I've seen her in. Anyways, we have MJF versus Jungleboy. Excalibur mentions that Jungleboy is 22, MJF is 23, so these are two very young competitors, and that we could be seeing the future of the business here. And I agree. I think both guys have massive potential. MJF is just like classic heel. He knows exactly what he's doing to be a heel, and he is heel all day, all the time, so he does a good job there. Jungleboy, again, he has tons of charisma. He has a really good look. He has the I don't know what you want to call it, the fame pedigree, I guess you could say. I don't want to say that he's riding his dad's coattails by any means, but he does have the pedigree, or name recognition kind of pedigree, even if people don't realize who he is outside of the wrestling world at this time. I think at some point that he is going to have to drop Jungle Boy as the name, and skew more towards his real name, which is still a good wrestling name. So I don't see why he can't use it. I've talked about this in the past. If he could bulk up just a little bit, maybe add like 10 pounds, I think he would definitely stand out even more. But at 22, he's got a long time to go, and both of these guys just improve very fast. So good to see. A decent back and forth match for the most part. There was actually great commentary that I believe happened in the commercial. They're talking about how Arn Anderson was watching the TV. Excalibur is like, that's kind of watching TV at a really weird angle. I mean, flat screens are really designed to be watched head on. So it was a great little jab at how WWE shows people watching the TV backstage standing at a very strange angle. So I don't know if that was completely on purpose. I'm guessing it was, given what Excalibur's commentary was right there. But like I said, I believe that comment happened in the commercial break. There might have been a little bit about it along the lines of Arn Anderson standing at a weird angle, but not about how, that's being unnatural or flat screens needing to be watched head on. I believe that was in the commercial break, so that came through on the fight feed. MJF actually ends up taking over through the commercial break. Jungle Boy makes a comeback right after the commercial break ends, and he hits 3 dives in a row, one through the bottom and second rope, one through the second and top rope, and then a flip over the top rope. There's loud Jungle Boy chants at this point, AEW chants at this point. After that third dive, though, Jungle Boy starts selling his back a little bit more. MJF had been working it over through the commercial break, but this is kind of the point where he really starts to sell his back more. MJF actually yells up to Brandi that he can have a real man while he was grabbing his junk. JR was so pissed off at that. He had a lot to say. You should go check it out if you haven't seen it. It was pretty funny. Jungle Boy ends up hitting a Liger bomb for a 2 count. Wardlow makes his way down to the ring and gives MJF his Dynamite diamond ring behind the ref's back. He punches Jungle Boy once while MJF's standing on the outside. Jungle Boy lands in the middle of the ring. He tosses the ring back to Wardlow, and he gets into the ring, gives Jungle Boy the double cross, and picks up the win. After that, Wardlow runs into the ring, and he picks up Jungle Boy, kind of gives him like this airplane spin drop type of thing. Luchasauras and Marko Stunt run down to the ring to break it up. Wardlow just backs away and leaves with MJF without any strikes thrown between the rest of the Jurassic Express and Wardlow. So we will see how that goes. I'm guessing at some point we are going to see Luchasaurus versus Wardlow. But I believe next week we have the cage match with Cody and Wardlow. So we will see. Pac promo. Hey, he's got clothes on. Well, for a little while. So the past 2 weeks, Pac has these promos, and he is standing out in the street. One looks like an abandoned subway tunnel. The other one looks like he is just kind of under a bridge somewhere out in the city. But he's just in his wrestling trunks. Does he walk around at night just in his wrestling trunks? This makes no sense. At least here he was wearing a training jacket or something. But then they do cut. He's in this very tight alleyway back in his wrestling trunks again. So I don't know what Pac has against wearing clothes, especially out in public when you are not wrestling. I don't know why you wear your wrestling gear out in public just to walk around, especially when it's probably cold, because it looked like he was filming all this stuff over in the UK or wherever, where he lives over there. And it's probably cold there, especially at night. So I don't know why you'd be walking around in your your Speedos with in that type of weather. That makes no sense. Basically, he's talking about how Kenny hasn't been the same since Pac choked him out in their first match. Says that Kenny is scared and that he should be. And we will be seeing them face off in a 30-minute Iron Man match in 2 weeks. So they announce what's happening coming up in the next week. So we have Wardlow and Cody in a steel cage match. We have the tag team battle royale for a Revolution title shot. We have Kenny Omega and Hangman Page versus the Lucha Bros for the title next week. 2 weeks, we have Kenny versus Pac in the 30-minute Iron Man match. And then at Revolution, it has been announced Dustin Rhodes versus Jake Hager. And then we have a recap of Jericho taking out Moxley's eye. Then Moxley taking out Santana's eye. So they've used recaps in this show wonderfully, because they put one in front of the women's title match. They put one in front of here. They had one at the top of the show. And I think this is definitely what they need to do. They need to remind the audience what happened and get everybody up to speed. And if you're not reminding old viewers, you are showing new viewers so they can get in the story right away. They're all caught up. Okay, Jericho took out Moxley's eye. Moxley took out Santana's eye. And that's where we are now. Boom, all done. If you've never watched the show before, at least you probably have some sort of idea. Jericho, Sammy, and Jake Hager make their way into one of the skyboxes. And then we have Santana with Ortiz versus Jon Moxley. Santana attacks Moxley as Moxley was just about to jump the rail. They fight into the crowd. And Excalibur makes a comment. It's two one-eyed men in an ass-kicking contest. They brawl back and forth. Moxley they finally get back into the ring, and basically this entire match was brawling back and forth. No one really had an advantage for any amount of time. It was really like, get a couple shots in, the other person gets a couple shots in. Get a couple shots in, the other person gets a couple shots in. So it was real back and forth around this entire time. Moxley was having some issues with his eye patch. It was very distracting. So I don't know what he needs to do about that. Hopefully he's actually going to be able to take it off by Revolution. I have not watched the New Japan, but I believe Moxley was not wearing the eye patch in the New Japan shows. So we have a little break in continuity here. But we'll see. Like I said, I haven't watched them. I just heard that might have been the case, but I have not confirmed. Anyways, Ortiz near the end of this ends up spitting alcohol into Moxley's good eye and blinds him. Santana takes advantage and hits a frog splash for a 2 count. Moxley, they're in a bit of like a lockup. Santana is kind of behind him, and Moxley ends up thumbing Santana's eye. So now they're both blind. They're trying to feel their ways around. Moxley ends up finding Santana, hits him with the paradigm shift quickly, and picks up the win. Immediately after the pin, though, Ortiz gets into the ring. He starts beating down Moxley, and then the rest of the inner circle comes down for the beatdown. Sammy ends up hitting a 630. I don't think I've ever seen Sammy do a 630 before. And then they hold up Moxley and feed him to Jericho. Jericho hits the Judas effect, and then Jericho is signaling to somebody in the back, and then Jeff Cobb comes out, makes his way down to the ring, gives Moxley the Tour of the Islands, which is his finisher, and that is the end of the show. So overall, I thought this week was a home run. There were no significant low points, if really any low points at all. It was a very consistent show. There was no like super high points, but all of it was good. There was nothing that felt overly forced or was horrible. The women's match was probably one of the best women's matches in AEW so far. It was definitely Nyla Rose's best one, and Riho is excellent. I wish they did a little bit more with her as the women's champion. I think really all they needed to do, they just needed to have some video packages with her. I think that's really it. They just needed to have some video packages with her and build up her character, because she was there quite a lot. She was on AEW Dark quite a lot. So it's not like she wasn't there, but she was not featured enough, and I don't think they did enough to build her up. They could have played on whether it's real or not. Well, obviously there is a relationship, but I don't know if it's a dating type of relationship. But her and Omega, if you told the story more of them being either really good friends or mention that they are actually dating, you don't need to go that far. But really, that Omega, has known Riho for a very long time. They're very good friends, something along those lines, and kind of they could have, I think, which actually would have worked really well now that I'm thinking about it. This is just completely off my head right now. What they could have done, they should have brought Riho into the Elite. And then I think she could have gotten the rub from the rest of the Elite because none of the factions right now have a female. Inner Circle doesn't. The Elite doesn't. Dark Order doesn't. Butcher Blade Bunny, but I don't know if Ali has been doing any wrestling, but I guess that's kind of a tiny little, that's a very small faction. It's just the three of them. But for any of the larger factions, I think if they brought Riho into the Elite, it might have played out a little better. Just a thought. But anyways, that was a decent match. All the matches were good. There are no low points in this show. So this was a solid outing. I saw the ratings were actually in the low 800,000s this week. Last week, they were in the mid 900s. So I'm curious what happened this week, but still just over 800,000. Still a good audience size considering that they weren't even expecting more than 500,000 when they started this show. So far, I think they are doing very strong. I'm still curious what the Fight TV numbers look like. Just to see how many other people are purchasing the show. I'm curious what the entire world audience is, not just on TNT, but we will see. So that is it for this week. This is a very good show. I'm looking forward to next week, especially with that cage match and the tag title match. That is going to be two cracking matches right there. So looking forward to it. I will be catching up on New Japan in the next couple days, get through those New Beginning shows so I can get reviews out on those. But again, if you are interested in being a co-host on this show, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, if you want to be a co-host for AEW, for New Japan, for both, or just a fill-in position if I can't get somebody that week or anything like that. Shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can send an email to the same location for comments, question, feedback, mailbag, whatever you want to call it, eric@thatswrestling.com. You can also find me over on Twitter, That's Wrestling 1 with the number 1 at the end of it. Somebody picked up the other one and hasn't used it forever. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find this as a podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, or you can head over to thatswrestling.com, pick up the RSS feed over there. If you are listening to this as a podcast and would like to join live when I do these shows, go over to YouTube and search for That's Wrestling and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the bell notification so it lets you know when I go live or when I schedule a live stream. And if the link is in the show notes as well if you're listening to this on podcast, so you can head over to that. So thanks for listening, everybody. I will get to you soon again. Hopefully all the consistency will come back now that various things have happened in my life, so we will see. So thanks for listening and watching, everybody, and I will see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you guys.